Welcome to Whisper, the Contingent Workforce podcast that will feature leaders who may not always have the loudest voices in the industry, but whose perspectives are sharp, grounded in real world experience, and committed to humanizing the industry. I'm your host, Mickey Pelletier. To learn a little bit more about the show, Manish Senta is going to share some details on the background of this podcast. Manish?
Thank you to the entire audience who is spending time to listen to what Mickey, Sashank, and Matt has to share. Thank you. My name is Manish Senta. I am founding and global CEO for TechWisen. We started with the concept of Whisperer with three clear intention. Intention number one was this industry is a true business function. How do we elevate industry and people who work in the talent acquisition space and give them a voice in a way that reflects the integral piece of the business that we do? Second, we are in human capital business. One of the things that we are really trying to bring back through this podcast, Whisperer, is the human element in our human capital business. We deal with one of the most hard commodity, and I'm using the word commodity because that's what procurement people uses. We are dealing with human being. So I want to bring back the human element in our human capital business and elevate our business to the next level so that our business gets the credibility it deserves and the business function it contributes. Last thing is there are incredible people in our business who have done incredible work to impact the business in their role, to impact the project, to impact the learning curve of talent acquisition. But they chose sometime to be in the backstage and do the work. From the platform Whisperer, our focus is to bring these leaders on the forefront so the entire audience can listen from leaders who are real contributor to the business. My partnership with Mickey is special because Mickey and Matt has such a long-standing relationship, and Mickey has given our industry a voice in a way that other leaders were not able to do it post-pandemic. So it was a very natural progression for TechWisen to go and work with Mickey to create these series of episodes. And I really hope the audience would take the time, listen to the speaker, but also share feedback, share insight, and also recommend people that they feel should be invited to the podcast. Looking forward to the episode with Sashank, Mickey, and Matt. Thank you.
Thanks, Manish. And joining and hosting this show is Matt Fringley. Matt, why don't you say hello to everyone and give a brief introduction?
Yeah, thanks, Mickey. Hello, everyone. I'm Matt Pringley. I'm Senior Vice President at TechWise, and I've been with the company for 5 years and looking forward to this podcast with Shashank.
So glad to have you here co hosting alongside, and I'm even more excited to introduce our guest. Today we have Shashank Saxena. Shashank, you've had an incredibly diverse and unique background, some of it in the contingent workforce space, some of it in vastly different areas. Can you share a little bit more about where you're at now and your background previous to that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Mickey. Thanks, Matt. I'm really excited to be here. So, thank you for the opportunity to join and share my experiences with you. My background is actually pretty straightforward. I've been in a few different industries. I started my career out of college in banking. So, that's where I really learned technology. I grew up the ranks in Citibank. From there, I moved to retail and e commerce. So, Kroger, which is one of the largest retailers in the US, was starting their e commerce business. So, I inherited a team of 6 or 7 developers, grew it to 600 developers, launched the e-commerce business into it being a multi-billion-dollar business. And then I went and worked with the executive team at Kroger in the strategy function. So that was my second career stint after banking. So banking, retail, e-commerce. And then the third one was in contingent labor. So I was the co-founder and CEO of a company that I started with my close friend Ryan called Venly. So Venly, we raised a seed round in mid 2017. We got the company started. We spent time writing the product. 2018, we launched the product. And a few years later, 2021, Workday acquired the company. So I was at Workday for 2.5 years post acquisition. That was my fairly recent stint. Then I joined Sierra Ventures as a managing partner. Sierra has been around since 1983. It's one of the OG Silicon Valley VC funds. And now I'm still a partner at Sierra, but I'm the co-founder and CEO of a data startup called Pantomath, which does data observability in terms of how does your entire data ecosystem connect, what's connected to what, is everything running fine? If there are any failures, we detect, we observe, we monitor, and now we're getting into AI agents, which is spinning up AI agents to resolve the issues. So four career stints so far: banking, retail, e-commerce, contingent labor, and HCM with Workday, and then data and venture capital.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I mean, a lot of our listeners are in the contingent workforce space, and once you join, you're sort of in, and that's a good thing, I think. But you've started on the outside, come to the inside, and then sort of gone back out. Obviously, there's still some ties to it. We're going to get to a lot of that here, but I think it's really exciting to hear that background, and appreciate you sharing all that. So I want to open it up with a light icebreaker here, just to get us going. Hit you with a quick one. What's the most effective thing that you've done recently that's uplifted you?
One of the things I did, so just on the personal life front, we had moved to California last year. And when we moved, and we've lived in the Midwest and on the East Coast before that. So when we moved, one of the things I tried to do is completely reboot and reset my lifestyle. So these days, I start my morning. Half the mornings, I go to the gym and work out before I even take the first meeting or before I eat a bite of food. And other few days, I go play pickleball. So either ways, I'm starting my day with activity and sport. So I've picked up pickleball recently, and I just feel that the tone and the temperament of the day changes. It's got my sleep schedule and all of those things in line. I've bought a Whoop, not to advertise on their behalf, but essentially the lifestyle change has really, really been helpful. And I feel it. I feel like a different person. So strongly recommend to anyone who's considering lifestyle changes is the biggest investment you make is not in your career, but in yourself as a person.
I was at a conference with Matt a couple months ago, and I think I saw you both mornings, either coming back from the gym, coming back from the run, and I think that's such an important part of being able to start your day when you could commit to that, and it is, I think, a lifestyle commitment and a change to bring that on and focus on fitness, or maybe just starting your morning more intentionally and proactively on that front. So I think that's a really cool thing, and appreciate you sharing that. Matt, why don't you kick us off with the first main question, the meat of our conversation that we wanted to get into?
Absolutely, Mickey. And thanks for sharing all that perspective, Shashank, both in your background as a technologist and sort of your new passion in pickleball. I think that's great way to, as you said, kickstart a day, get out and get healthy a little bit. But going back to the technology perspective, one of the things I'm curious to learn is what do you think of the dilemma related to how humans and technology partner, particularly around AI? How do you think we can approach resolving that as this continues to evolve in the future?
Uh, this is an interesting time when every few years there's a cycle where that same question comes up and manifests itself in a little bit different forms, right? So AI isn't necessarily a new concept. So if you think of, Matt, the movie Terminator, it released, I'm trying to do the math here, 41, 42 years ago. So
1985, I think, something like that.
yeah, so
Yeah.
that's 84, 85, and 83, whenever it released. The point being, it's 40 plus years old, give or take, right? And the concept of AI was the whole front and center around the movie Terminator. So the point is, AI isn't particularly new, just the way that we are thinking about it as a replacement for humans this time is different, right? Because of what Gen AI has done with and OpenAI has done with Gen AI. So when you think of that, most people think of things as high tech and high touch on a sliding scale, right? Do you want to be high tech or do you want to be high touch? And that's not necessarily the best framework to think around it because this is not an either or. You have to think of it more as a X and Y axis, where how do you be high tech and high touch both at the same time and go extreme on that quadrant, and then go down and break down the use cases where it makes most sense to be high touch, where it is a human first service related task, and the high tech on that other axis is where is it just drudgery, where humans suck at doing it. They'd rather go do something different. They'd rather go talk to customers and discuss and build the relationship rather than executing on three mundane tasks in a system that's blocking them from doing the relationship worthy tasks, right? So it's the X and Y axis framework and not a sliding scale of a X axis to think about it in terms of AI is what gets automated and then what stays to refocus and repurpose time and attention.
I think that's a great perspective and a way of thinking about it because there's certainly elements in every job where you could think, gosh, if I didn't have to spend 20, 30 minutes of my day doing this, I could be so much more productive over here doing something else. So I do think that's a great way to look at it. And I'm personally excited to continue exploring AI and how to use AI. I know it's a hot topic, but it's a real topic that every one of us is probably dabbling somewhat, whether it's just the basic chat GPTs or everything else, just to bounce ideas off of or see what it may spit back at you in terms of, here's something you could think of, or here's another way to approach a conversation, or here's another way to resolve an issue. I think as we see that evolve into more complex tasks that can be, as you said, automated, but not necessarily replace the complete human element, I think that'll be really interesting.
Yeah, makes sense.
And I think where we're at right now is we're all experimenting with it in one way or another. And then when you get to the enterprise level, that experimentation can feel a little bit riskier, right? Because now we have a lot more on the line from a business versus me personally planning my vacation using ChatGPT, right? So we're beginning to see this marrying of augmenting some of those mundane tasks like you alluded to, and how can we automate those? And I think there's, I don't know, maybe it's unfounded fear mongering around, is AI really coming for your job? I think there will be certain levels in jobs where maybe it does come for that, but maybe entry level jobs are no longer really entry level. They're more of those mid tier jobs, but you can join at entry level, augmented by the use of AI, and it's incredibly fascinating, maybe a pinch scary on where this could go, just in the next, 1 to 5 years.
Yeah, but that's where, Mickey, if we try to think this through, right? When we say AI and autonomy, we think fully autonomous. Whereas it's not going to jump to that day one, right? What we're
Right.
seeing here take off is more the co-pilot, human in the loop, augment, and be a co-pilot experience. That's the form of AI that has really taken off in terms of most companies having a co-pilot experience. And that, I think, is a good framework to think about it and to get started. Whether we get to fully autonomous at some point or not, that's secondary. But for today, AI is very front and center around helping humans. And this whole theory around displacement too, I don't know if I fully buy that because let me give a couple of different examples, right? If you think of the dot-com boom and monster.com, an industry we know very well, which is recruiting. When monster.com first started, the question was, why am I going to need recruiters and staffing firms? Because candidates will put up their resumes on Monster and companies can just go find talent on monster.com. So it's going to be a displacement of the middleman and the staffing industry won't survive. Where did monster.com end up making most of its revenue? Staffing firms. Recruiters were the biggest users, right? When Zillow started, it was, why am I going to need a realtor? Because realtors would give you a list of MLS listings, and now it's democratized. And on an app, I can see it on Zillow. So what's the realtor doing? And why do I need a realtor? Guess where Zillow makes all its money from? Realtors. When LinkedIn started, it was monster.com 2.0, is this time for sure staffing agencies and recruiters are gone because now we're in a connected world. There is no 7 degrees of separation. There is no seventh connection on LinkedIn. Everyone's either a first, second, or third connection. So the 7 degrees of separation is down to 3 degrees of separation. And guess where LinkedIn makes all its money from? Staffing agencies and recruiters. And the last example I'll give is also financial services. If you think of in the 80s and 90s, your financial advisor was actually a trader. They would execute trades for you, buy X amount of Google stock, sell Y amount of Microsoft or Amazon stock. That's what they did. Today, if you go work with your financial planner, the trading is not E-Trade type platforms did not displace the financial planners. In fact, they help them when now your financial planner and advisor talks to you about your career goals, retirement goals, what do you want to do post-retirement, what's the kind of lifestyle you want to have, because the trading doesn't take up most of their day. That's just one click button on the portal. So the trade helps execute to the broader retirement strategy, right? And the conversations with the clients has gotten more strategic. So that's really my point around AI, where it's going to take off the quote unquote equivalent of the trading of it, which is the stock trades. Sure, we have to do it, but the real conversation is around retirement planning. And AI is perfectly suited to take off all the drudgery, is what I call it, so that you can have more value added, goals driven, and outcomes driven conversations at a human level, which was the high touch service on the quadrant that I'd mentioned earlier.
That certainly gives me hope because I think there is a lot of fear mongering around the AI coming for the jobs, and I think it's yet to be seen. And depending on what articles and things you read, it could tell a different story. But I appreciate that insight because like I said, it gives me hope because I worry about the longevity of consulting and staffing and whatnot. But I think that story is yet to be told, and we're experimenting, we're figuring that out, and we don't know for sure where it is going, but I think the way you've explained it is very positive, and hopefully that's where we'll find ourselves here. And speaking of the contingent workforce space, we often think of the competition between FTE talent and contingent talent. Now, based on what we've heard and what we're just talking about with AI, it sounds like there is a third party in that competitive talent landscape, the AI agents. I was wondering if you could share more on that and really what you think that means for all the parties that are involved.
Uh, that's actually where I think the biggest displacement will really come from. And I'm going to make 2 points here. The first one is, of course, I'm biased because of my relationship with Workday. But if you think of Workday, Workday was a system of record, a single system of truth for all your employees, either full time or part time or interns. They were all in Workday HCM, the core HCM system. Workday, when it acquired Venly, it became a more holistic system of record where now you can manage your employees and your non-employees, consultants, contractors on that same platform with the Venly Workday integration. What Workday recently launched is the AI agent system of record. So that's the third way of getting work done, is spinning up AI agents. And that I think is going to be very real. So as a VC, one of the theses I had was SaaS, and SaaS traditionally has meant software as a service. Now, what SaaS is going to get redefined as is services as software, where there are human related services that get automated with AI agents. So, for example, the company I'm doing now, Pantomath, there are a bunch of services contracts where at 2 a.m., when a data job fails in Snowflake or Databricks, a human, either in here or some other part of the world, would have to wake up middle of the night to go check why did the job fail and make sure it's rerunning fine and rerun all the jobs in the pipelines and troubleshoot the issue. No one wants to do that at 2 a.m. Why can't we spin up an AI agent to go fix all the issues in the entire data infrastructure, whether Informatica, Snowflake, or Databricks, or wherever the job failure is? Why can't an AI agent go resolve that? So that is services as software in terms of AI agents resolving what would have been offshore services contract in a lot of cases. So that's where I think AI agents will be valuable in terms of taking off the drudgery of tasks that are just gruesome for humans to do. And that's the low hanging fruit. We're seeing this in support centers, call centers, support desks, and trying to do self service support isn't particularly a new concept, right? Online banking was meant to automate that. So that way, how often would you visit a bank branch 20 years ago versus today? How often do you visit a bank branch, and how many of those tasks have been moved to a mobile app? So when we didn't yell and scream and complain when things were moving from driving up to a branch location to a mobile app, now why are we yelling and screaming when we're just taking that one step further from the mobile app into an AI agent resolving the task? It's along very similar lines. It's just the next step of the evolution is you went from retail banking to online banking to mobile banking to now AI agents resolving tasks.
And I feel like we're AI agent has been like the latest buzzword in the AI maturity of buzzwords these past few years. We talk about AI agents working alongside people and humans. So whether that is an FTE or a contingent worker, and AI agents can really step in for just various functions. And we're seeing that at the baseline entry level. Do you feel that there is a certain threshold that only AI agents can go up to a certain proficiency before a human needs to come in? Or is, I imagine it's yet to be seen, but what are your thoughts on that in terms of its capability and what that limit is?
So today, where the evolution is it's very much the AI copilot experience where you handhold me and do it with me in terms of the task step by step. I don't think we are there where it's for some tasks we are, but for a lot of tasks we're not, where it's fully autonomous, where don't just tell me about it, go do it, and then send me a Slack message later once it's done, right? We will get there at some point. That's the part we're not there yet. So today, AI is very much hand holding a human and doing it with the human. So, for example, in our software, we're building a task list of every time a job at 2 a.m. in the night fails running in your data warehouse. We give a list of 8 different steps, and the humans would have to do the 8 steps. And the human can review that and either hit accept or reject on that in terms of do you want the AI to do it or not. But it's still the human deciding, it's the human reviewing. But AI has taken away the painful understanding of going ahead and researching the 8 different things you need to do and coming up with a list, right? Because it just pops it up for you and you hit accept. And if you hit accept, then it does it for you. And you can go ahead and edit it where you want to do 3 things, but not the other 4. And that's okay too. So it's a very much handhold the human, but let the human decide eventually. So that's where, and this is no different than if what you look at in the automotive sector, right? Full self-driving isn't fully here. I mean, we can discuss Waymo and Tesla robotaxi, but the point is that's not necessarily fully here. It's almost here, but not fully here. But assisted self driving is definitely here and has been here for the last couple of years. So that's really how I think about enterprise tasks too, is assisted self driving for now until it becomes full self driving.
I think that's a great example. It hits home, right? Because most of us have been in a Waymo or been in a car, a Tesla or something that has full self-drive. And you're right, it does pretty much everything. And we will get to a point where you have that futuristic world as you see in the sci-fi movies where you just sit in the back of the car and there's nobody driving it, but it gets you to where you're going. But that's not going to happen tomorrow or even over the next couple of months or years, right? That's probably the longer perspective and where we'll go with fully autonomous, whether it's driving or other tasks. So I
Yep.
think that's a really great perspective to share. I do want to stay in the contingent workforce space a little bit with this next question because you actually came from outside of the space, as you shared early on, where you spent time as a technologist, whether it was in finance or in retail, and then ultimately came into contingent workforce with Binley. So tell us, what's your perspective as you entered the contingent workforce space from the outside? What was your first impressions of the staffing industry?
Oh, I just had to answer to the highest calling of mankind, which is contingent labor, right? So that's, but on the more serious note, if you think of the contingent labor industry was very interesting for me for this 4 5 years that I was in it. The first impression was the people are incredibly nice, incredibly helpful. Even if it's competitive, they're still helpful. Uh, I'll give you an example. The co-founder of Fieldglass. I had lunch with him in Chicago right when I was about to start Wendley. I had decided to start it, but I had not yet started it. So I drove up to Chicago to get his take on his learnings on the contingent labor industry. And he was very kind and very generous with his time. 6 months into starting Wendley, I had pinged Doug Leby from Beeline, competitor. I haven't met a more giving, kind, and generous human being in terms of his time and sharing his perspective and his 20 plus years of learning about the industry and experience. So that was the first thing that I noticed is the industry is a very tight-knit community where everyone plays well together, even if you're competing. That was my initial observation. The second thing was the industry has not necessarily been tech forward the whole time. And a lot of it could have been, I shared a couple of examples, right? Every time, every 5, 7, 8, 10 years, there was a threat saying this is going to totally disrupt contingent labor. And it's like, it really didn't. So the industry has been incredibly resilient in terms of how it survives and learns to be a consumer of the tech rather than get disrupted by the tech. So that's good and bad. Good in the sense that they figure out a way of how to use the tech. Bad in the sense that not paranoid enough in terms of how do we build the tech to transform. So in the case of AI agents, today, I don't think a lot of staffing firms are using it effectively enough. So the question will really be just because they're not using it does not mean that it's not happening to them, right? So you want to make tech happen, you don't want tech to happen to you. And that's a little bit difference in perspective where in contingent labor, tech happens to you. Very rarely does the industry insiders make it happen. So that's where I feel there's an opportunity for people to kind of be earlier adopters and grow and scale with it because the companies that use it better are the ones that have an edge in an industry which is very, very hard to differentiate in.
Yeah, I think that's a great point as well. Just thinking about the example you shared about technology happening to you, there's a few different examples I can think of where people have just looked at what are the basic tasks that a recruiter needs to do, and whether that's scanning a resume to see if it matches specific details in a job description, or whether that's just actually picking up the phone and making a phone call to a candidate to see if they're even interested in talking to the recruiter about the job. Those things I have seen, and we've all experienced, I'm sure, at this point, where technology has come in and disrupted that. And you have technology that can easily scan and parse resumes based on what the job description indicates. You have technology that can call and sound very human-like
Yeah.
and help coordinate scheduling of interviews or following up on interviews and next steps, just taking off those administrative tasks where the recruiter is still the one having the in-depth conversation,
Mhm.
validating the skill set and understanding, does this candidate really fit what the company's looking for, not just based on a list of skills, right? Because there's still a human element in that where you need to match the culture and what's the environment like, and is this candidate going to be a fit with the team or the other project team members. Those are the things that I'm sure eventually technology will also be able to solve for, but currently that's where I feel those limitations sit. But I think the point you shared overall is just really valid because technology does seem to happen to this industry rather than people from within it necessarily thinking about how to disrupt the industry from within.
Yeah.
The intent of this show was the human element of things, and we talked a lot about AI during this, and I don't think this will be the last conversation about AI. We can't get away from it, and I think that's great. But the first thing you brought up about the industry, that true human element in the close-knit group, and that it's generally a nice group of people. I mean, that's one thing that's always been great about this. You see various layoffs, you see various people looking for their next opportunity. Things didn't work out, and it seems it's a very helpful group in terms of reaching out and trying to look out for one another and doing what they can. And your stories of going to some of the lead folks at some of your direct competitors and them sharing their experience. I mean, I think that's a pretty powerful message. I don't know that maybe, but I don't know that all in other industries that the top head honchos companies are going and talking with others, and particularly a new kid on the block that's coming in to potentially have a technology that may disrupt theirs or really challenge theirs. I think that's kind of an inspiring story just on the human side of our industry, and appreciate you sharing that. And I don't know, just sort of recapping here, it's always fascinating to hear people's takes on AI, because a year from now, Shashank, you may be saying something a little bit different, because we've all learned every week it's changing. There's a new tool. It's the next latest advancement. And what we knew a year ago is vastly different from what we know now. But your idea of the high tech and the high touch and bringing that together to take on more of those mundane tasks and being able to get automation out of that, to as much extent as possible. We're going to continue to see that, and we don't really even know what it's going to look like in 1 to 2, particularly 5 years. Your recommendations around AI agents and how that can be used in the staffing space, I think, is a powerful story that a lot of companies need to lean into on how those can be used to redefine how their work is being done. And you talk about services as a software. That's something we really need to keep our eyes and ears open to, because that's going to shape a lot of the things in our space and in other industries as well. And then the way you tied it together nicely, talking about entering the industry as an outsider and the perspective you've had there. So I think, Shashank, it was really cool to have you here because you've done a lot, and you said you kind of have a simple story, but I don't know, it's very straightforward to you, but as an outsider to your story, I'm thinking, geez, this guy's really done a lot. So I really think you have a great perspective, and listeners are really going to value that. So I want to thank you so much for joining the show and being with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity, and I had a good time chatting with you guys.
Well, thanks everybody for tuning in and listening. Hope you all have a great day. Thanks all.